I had a lot of friends of mine try to talk me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy. And one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. And there were just lots of people that thought it was a really crazy idea. And there was some people that had tried to start rocket companies, not succeeded. And they tried to talk me out of it. And but the thing is that the premise for talking me out of it was, well, we think you're going to lose the money that you invest. I was like, well, that was my expectation anyway. Right. So I don't really mind if I lose. I mean, I might, but I mean, it's not like I was trying to figure out the rank ordered best way to invest money, and on that basis, chose space.
Right.
It's not like that's. I thought, wow.
You weren't looking at like money market bonds, AAA bonds,
right, exactly.
rocket company.
Like
you weren't like
do real estate. Invest in shoemaking, anything. And space is highest ROI.
Exactly.
That is not what that wasn't the premise. I just thought that it was important that humanity expand beyond Earth, and we weren't doing that. So maybe there was something I could do to kind of spur that on.
Great ideas flow through you. Teach yourself to learn, to understand, to feel that great ideas flow through you. That when you are feeling bold, powerful, courageous, ambitious, an idea comes to you, that is the right, perfect idea for you right now. And don't let your head talk you down from doing it. I think most of us live small. I think we're constantly living small. We're so concerned about our friends telling us that our ideas suck. It's us. It's ourselves. It's you telling yourself that your idea sucks, that you can never do that. We feel great one day. This is the entrepreneur roller coaster, right? You feel great one day. Oh my God, this is such a great idea. I could go do this. This is amazing. And maybe you start taking some action on it. But then what immediately happens is your head starts taking over. So, well, you can't do that because you don't have the school, the education, the parents, the connections. You live in the wrong country, you're the wrong gender, race, etc. And then it stops. Meanwhile, dummies are winning off of your idea. With less heart, with less drive, with less ambition, with less of a desire to do good, they're winning off of your idea because they went off and did something while you are stuck overthinking your idea. This is what we do. This is what entrepreneurs, especially the heart-centered ones, do. Stuck constantly overanalyzing, overthinking, and stuck in the mud instead of actually creating. And the way to go through it is to trust in your ideas. If you're concerned that that's too egotistical, like, oh, I'm so great, I got these great ideas, great, take yourself out of the equation. Trust that the idea came from somewhere and it was given to you. And it's your responsibility to birth it into life. It's not even your idea, it was given to you. And then go off and create. One of the things that has really helped me achieve speed and momentum is I've learned to not judge the ideas that come to me. I've just said, you know what? Because I came up with this idea, now I have to go do something about it. And sometimes it turns into the next great thing, and sometimes it goes nowhere. That's okay, right? The first top 10 video I ever made on my channel was on Kanye West, and he's behind me on the wall. There he is, Kanye West. Because my friend made a blog post about Kanye that was in a negative light, and so I wanted to make it positive. Say, hey, you can learn from him. And so I made a top 10 video on Kanye West just to show my friend. I had other things planned today, shut that all down just to make this one video, just to show my friend. With no plan of, this is gonna be my next big idea, right? People say, well, how did you know? I didn't know. I got an idea and I did something about it. I'm not that smart to be able to project 10 years forward and say, here's where the world is going, right? Maybe I can leave that to Elon Musk. I'm not that smart. But it came to me, so I did it. And it turned into something amazing. I've had other ideas that I started and they didn't go anywhere. Either the idea wasn't good enough or more likely, my energy just kind of faded from it. And so I stopped doing it, but at least I gave it a shot. All of these ideas that you've got, you don't know which one's gonna work out. They could all be, practically speaking, great ideas. What's the best idea for you? I don't know. You don't know either until you start to try it by taking the immediate action on it. You have to trust in your ideas, that they came to you for a reason and you're supposed to do something about them. So how do we start doing it? How do you start taking the action? How do you start getting unstuck in your head of all the stuff that holds us back from actually creating? Let me give you some steps. Step number 1, idea to action. Take your brain out of the equation. there's a phrase that when you're in your head, you're dead. Like as soon as you start overthinking something, it's over. You came up with the idea, you're going to do something about it. When? Today. You came with the idea, so you're going to do something about it. When? Today. Right now. What's your next idea? What are you thinking of right now? Go do something about it. Immediate action. Because you came up with the idea, therefore you must go do the thing. That's the training you want to give yourself. Doesn't mean you have to go and do some big thing, but you have to get started. Immediate momentum. You want to start a YouTube channel. Great. You pull out your phone and you make a video. Doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what the lighting is. Don't worry about the sound. Don't worry about having a fancy microphone or a fancy camera. You pull out your phone, you press record, and you say you're starting a channel, and you post that first video. Okay? But then it's going to suck. Great. Which leads to point number 2. Expect to suck at the beginning. Why do you expect to be great out of the gate? You will not be great out of the gate. Doesn't mean that you suck as a human. It just means that your product sucks. But it's your first attempt. That's okay. When you try anything, you fall. When you get on a bicycle, you didn't just ride, right? You get a skateboard, you didn't just go. You're going to suck. That's okay. That's the learning process. You're going to learn a lot more and get better a lot quicker by actually trying, where we're stuck in learning and researching and planning, and then nothing that ends up getting created. You are wasting your best energy on planning. This is what most people do. This is what happens almost all the time. You come with an idea, you think it's a great idea. Oh my gosh, it's such a great idea. Great. You spend the next day or until you go to sleep planning, researching, preparing. And then you wake up tomorrow and say, I can't do that. That's crazy. That idea I had yesterday is crazy. I can't do that. Who did I think I was to be able to do that? You spent your best energy, your most confident energy, your most bold energy on doing the wrong thing, planning instead of making. Planning is important, but it's not the first thing you should do. The first thing you do is take some kind of action, some kind of immediate momentum, some kind of commitment, especially to somebody else, that you're going to do something. So if you want to start a YouTube channel, you take out your phone and say, hi, I'm going to start my YouTube channel. I don't know what I'm going to make content of. I'm really nervous, but I've been putting this off for 5 years and I'm tired of putting things off. So I don't know, join my journey and let's see how it goes. Great. Post. And as you start making, you're going to get better at it. Your first thing is supposed to suck. If you're going to get started, you're going to start making YouTube videos as an example, and your first video is amazing, then you actually suck. Then you waited too long. Your first version of whatever you do should be terrible. That's okay. So step 1 is listen to the ideas. Trust the ideas. They are right for you because they came to you. You got to do something about it. Take immediate action. And then step number 2 is expect to suck. Reduce the burden of expectation on yourself that you have to be great from the start. As kids, we do this, right? We start, we try, we fail, we laugh, ha ha ha. And as adults, all of a sudden, we're afraid to do anything. And what you do is just slide into more of your comfort zone and more of your comfort zone, more of your comfort zone, and more of your comfort zone, and then realize, why do I hate my life so much? Because you're doing the same thing every day because you're afraid to branch out a little bit. Just expect to suck. Reduce that burden that you have to be amazing. And if you keep practicing, you keep loving it, you keep building it, guess what? You're going to get great at it. It doesn't have to take a decade. There's hacks, there's shortcuts. Model success, you'll get there faster, but you still have to do the journey. And step 1 of the journey is the most important step and is also the most painful step, that it's going to suck. Amazing. Every time you suck at something at the start, pat yourself on the back. You did a good job. Step number 3, and this is just the caveat, is pay attention to your energy when you come up with ideas, okay? I'm assuming you're in a positive, bold, ambitious, confident, courageous state. When you are feeling a positive emotion, the ideas that flow through you are the right ideas for you. However, when you're feeling negative, low, you're feeling judgmental, you're feeling anger, you're feeling depression, you're feeling rage, you're upset that somebody else is having success, when you're in a negative mindset, the ideas that come to you are not the ones for you. Those are the ones to sit on, right? Like, I'm going to show her, I'm going to do this thing to him. I'm going to get my revenge by doing that. Okay. Those are the ideas to sit on. And it's funny because those are the ideas we usually act on. The spontaneous ideas that come to you that are negative, you're more likely to act on than the spontaneous ones that come to you that are positive. You're more likely to send that nasty text or leave that negative review or do that negative thing instead of the positive one. And so if you're in a negative state of mind, that's when it's worth waiting till tomorrow. You know, if tomorrow you think it's the right call, okay, then let's think about it. But not in the moment. Don't do the negative ones in the moment. But if it's positive, if you just came back from a seminar, or you're watching this video, or you're around amazing humans and you get these great ideas, those are the ones that you need to take some immediate action on. You have amazing ideas. You have a heart and a soul that wants to serve, that wants to help, that wants to contribute, that wants to not just fill your pockets and fill your bank account, but also contribute and help other people. You know you've got something much bigger inside you. But it does not come out unless you start to listen to those ideas and start to do something about them. So the next time an idea comes to you, maybe you got one right now, maybe something's flowing through you right now, learn to trust that idea. Tell yourself that great ideas flow through you, that you need to take some immediate action on it, and that it's gonna suck at the beginning, and that's the best, and that's how you learn. Because if you kept doing that, do that for 3 months, do that for 6 months, do that for 12 months, the amount of amazing things you're gonna help create for yourself, for your family, for your community, for the world is gonna be just outstanding. And I can't wait to see what you end up making. Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
I think being in Silicon Valley is pretty important because what's really critical with electric cars is electrical engineering, software, and electronics. And Silicon Valley has the best concentration of talent in those areas in the world.
2008 in particular was awful because we had the 3rd launch failure in a row of our Falcon 1 vehicle at SpaceX. The Tesla financing round that we were raising fell apart because the economy was going through tailspin. And it's pretty hard to raise money for a startup car company, late 2008 when GM and Chrysler are busy going bankrupt. That was tough. And then Solar City had a deal with Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley had to renege on the deal because they themselves were running out of money. So it looked like all 3 companies were going to die. And I was also going through a divorce. So that was definitely a low point.
So it's 2008, you're going through a divorce, which like some, to borrow your word, douchebag bloggers are writing about to make even worse.
Right, yes, that's true. In addition to all that stuff happening, I was getting dumped on massively in the press.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like all 3 companies are going to fail. I mean, why do you keep going with all 3? Like, I feel like even a lot of great entrepreneurs in that situation would have been like, I've already sunk everything I have in these companies, and I got to pick one. But you didn't. I mean, you kept doing all 3. Why?
That was a very tough call. At the end of 2008, that was probably one of the toughest calls I've had to make, because I could either reserve capital for one company or the other. I mean, fortunately, Solar City didn't need a ton of capital, so they were okay. But between SpaceX and Tesla, it's sort of like if you've got 2 kids, and what do? Do you spend all your money to maximize the probability of success of one, or do you try to keep both alive? Fortunately, it worked. It's very important to seek out, to actively seek out, and listen very carefully to negative feedback. And this is something that people tend to avoid because it's painful. But I think this is a very common mistake, is to not actively seek out and listen to
negative feedback.
Where do you do that? Do you go into forums? Do you go into Twitter? Like, what are your areas where you go to look for feedback on, let's say, the Tesla?
Well, it's like everyone I talk to is, in fact, when friends get a product, I say, look, don't tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like.
Right.
And because otherwise your friend is not going to tell you what he doesn't like.
Right.
He's going to say, oh, I love this and that, and then leave out the this is the stuff I don't like list, because he wants to be your friend, doesn't want to offend you. So you really need to sort of coax negative feedback, and you know that if somebody is your friend, or at least not your enemy, and they're giving you negative feedback, then they may be wrong, but it's coming from a good place. And sometimes even your enemies give you good negative feedback. When I started the first internet company, Zip2, with my brother and another person, Greg Curry, it wasn't really with the thought of being wealthy. I've got nothing against being wealthy, but
we'll get back to that later too.
but it's just it was just from the standpoint of wanting to be part of the internet, and I figured if we could make enough money to just get by, that would be okay. And when we started off, we literally only had like one computer, and so it would be our web server during the day, and I'd code at night. And we just got a small office in Palo Alto back when rent was not insane, and it cost us like $450 a month. It was cheaper than an apartment, so we actually just slept in the office and then showered at the YMCA on Page Mill, El Camino. So we'd walk over there and shower, and that was actually, I think that was when I first met you, by the way. So I don't know if how many people, probably not many people know this, but we actually pitched Steve in like January '96 on the Zip2 business plan, and actually I thought Steve was actually one of the most up to speed on what actually was in our business plan. Most of the people we met did not actually read our business plan. In fact, a lot of venture capitalists we met at the time didn't even know what the internet was. They'd never used it.
Sure.
And they didn't think
I'm
it would
not sure
amount
if we
to
still
anything.
do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm talking like sort of well-known people on Sand Hill. I was like, wow, okay. But at the time, nobody had made any money on the internet. So I guess that's it wasn't really clear evidence that there was a business. I should say that when I was a kid, I didn't really have any grand designs. I mean, the reason I started programming computers is because I like computer games, and I'd play lots of computer games, and I learned that if I wrote software and sold it, then I could get more money and buy better computers. So it wasn't really, with some grand vision or anything. When I was growing up, I'd read lots of books, and they were very often set in the United States, and it seemed like a lot of new technology was being developed in the United States. So I thought, okay, I really want to work on new technology, so I want to get to Silicon Valley. Which when I was growing up, Silicon Valley seemed like some sort of mythical place, like Mount Olympus or something. I think one thing that's important is if you have a choice of a lower valuation with someone you really like, or a higher valuation with someone you have a question mark about, take the lower valuation. It's better to have a higher quality venture capitalist who you think would be great to work with than to get a higher valuation with someone where there's even a question mark, really. I think that's important. It's sort of like getting married.
The secret to your success to be the CEO of two companies at the same time?
No. I think it's...
Because look at the correlation.
Yeah.
Struggling companies, everything's in the craft can in December 2008, so let's take on a new CEO gig. And same for Steve, coming back to Apple. Right?
No, definitely it was not my intention to be CEO of two companies. There were certain things that I kind of wanted to... I thought were important to happen, and I thought it was important that there was... that an electric vehicle happened, that there was a success in the electric vehicle arena, because the incumbent companies were convinced that it was not possible to create an electric car that looked good, had a good range performance and so forth, and that even if you did make such a car, it would not sell, because people had this love of gasoline. So we had to show that it was possible to create a compelling electric car, long range, good looking, all those things. That was a Tesla Roadster. And if you made such a thing, people would buy it. I certainly was I was very, very bookish. I was reading all the time. So I was either reading, working on my computer, reading comics, playing Dungeons & Dragons, that kind of thing.
And I understand Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that wonderful book by Douglas Adams. That was a key book for you. What was it about that book that fired your imagination?
So I guess when I was in around 12 or 13, I had kind of an existential crisis, and I was reading various books on trying to figure out the meaning of life and, what does it all mean? Because it starts seeming quite meaningless. And then we happen to have some books by Nietzsche and Schopenhauer in the house, which you should not read at age 14. It's bad. It's really negative. But then I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was quite positive, I think, and it sort of highlighted an important point, which is that a lot of times the question is harder than the answer, and if you can properly phrase the question, then the answer is the easy part. And so, if to the degree that we can better understand the universe, then we better know what questions to ask, and then whatever the question is that most approximates what's the meaning of life, that's the question we could ultimately get closer to understanding. And so I thought, well, to the degree that we can expand the scope and scale of consciousness and knowledge, human knowledge, then that would be a good thing. Well, we've got a lot of work to do because we've got a lot of service centers and charge stations to construct. So mostly it's we're trying to build our service and charge infrastructure as fast as possible. And I know this, some of the customers who have ordered a car, they're not in the major cities, so they're a little unhappy with us because we are delaying delivery of their car. In fact, I'm going to apologize to some of them personally and explain the reason we are delaying delivery is because we really want them to have a good experience. But if they're too far from a service center and the charging is not sorted out, then they will not have a good experience. So we're going to delay the cars just for a few months to make sure that they have a good experience. I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing.
Me Too type ideas.
Yeah, slight iterations on a theme, and it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But by first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world, and what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, okay, what are we sure is true, or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Give me an example of that. What's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, in fact people do, that battery packs are really expensive and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past.
Some of us noticed that the stereo goes to 11 on the Tesla. This is a Spinal Tap reference for those who know that this one goes to 11 and you need just one more.
It's louder than loud.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. But no one seems to have noticed the product lineup. So you got the Model S, you got the Model X.
Oh yeah.
You've just trademarked the Model E.
Yeah.
No one's met anything.
What do you? Yeah. You got to.
And the Model and the Model Y.
Yeah.
Now, what's behind this?
I know exactly. Well, I guess there's not a lot of humor in the trademark law, because obviously we just trademarked sexy. So, and then we're having this discussion with Ford because the Ford's council they also didn't get it because they're sort of slightly opposing us using Model E. And then they saw that we registered Model Y, and they said, "Oh, you're planning to use Model Y instead of Model E?" Like, no, it was just a joke.
Right, we don't do that.
Like, what does it spell?
When trying different things, you got to have some acceptance of failure, as you were alluding to earlier. Failure must be an option. If failure is not an option, it's going to result in extremely conservative choices, and you may get something even worse than lack of innovation. Things may go backwards. If what you really want is you want reward and punishment to be proportionate to the actions that you seek. So if what you're seeking is innovation, then you should reward success in innovation, and only there should be minor consequences for trying and failing. There should be minor. With significant rewards for trying and succeeding, minor consequences for trying and not succeeding, and major negative consequences for not trying.
Or maybe I just blank out the word doubt. No, I mean, to be totally frank, I doubted us too. So I thought we, had maybe, when starting SpaceX, maybe had a 10% chance of reaching orbit. So to those who doubted us, I was like, well, I think you're probably right. I mean, the number of times that I was told, like, because I was taking the money that I earned from PayPal and rolling it into to create SpaceX and Tesla, and I ended up spending it all. It wasn't the intention, but almost both companies went bankrupt. Frankly, 2008 was a tough year. It took us 4 attempts just to get to orbit with Falcon 1. But a lot of times people would tell me this joke, like, how do you make a small fortune in the rocket industry? You start with a large one, is the punchline. And I was like, okay, I already heard that joke 12,000 times, Anyway, and it almost came true. We just barely made it there, that 4th launch of Falcon 1. That's all the money we had for that 4th launch. And then, and that wasn't even enough to save the company. We also then had to win the NASA cargo resupply contract. So that came a little after, a little bit later, or right towards the end of 2008. Those are the 2 key things that saved SpaceX. Otherwise, we would have, not made it. So hey, I think those doubters their probability assessment was correct. But fortunately, fate has smiled upon us and brought us to this day. Yeah, human spaceflight was always the goal, the fundamental goal of SpaceX.
As you look back on your career in the space industry, what has been the most surprising or unexpected challenge that you faced? And along those lines, if you were to go back in time and talk to your 20-year-old self, would you do anything differently?
Go back in time to your 20-year-old self.
I mean, I think it would make far fewer mistakes. Obviously, if I could go, like, here's a list of all the dumb things you're about to do. Please do not do them.
Wouldn't we all?
It'd be a very long list, and like, here, let me write it down or something. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, so it's hard to say. I mean, I've made so many foolish mistakes, I have lost count, honestly. I mean, some of these things I just wish that's simple sort of mantra, management by rhyming. I mean, it worked for Homer, okay? But management by rhyming is that thing I was saying, like, if the schedule is long, the design is wrong. We've overcomplicated the design many times. And I think we should have just gone with a simpler design, with the acid test being, how long will it take for this to fly? And if it's going to take a long time, don't do it.
do something else. I think we need to push for radical breakthroughs. And if you don't push for radical breakthroughs, you're not going to get radical outcomes. And that does mean taking risks. Common sense that if you take a big risk, in order to have a big reward, there must be a big risk. Most of the time, you cannot find big reward for small risk. Those are rare. So you're going to have some proportionality with the risk and reward. Simplify your product as much as possible. And then like if I think of some of the ways in which, how does a smart engineer make dumb mistakes, is optimize something that shouldn't exist. Don't optimize something that shouldn't exist. But people are trained to do this in college. You can't say no to the professor. The professor's going to give you the exam, and you've got to answer all the questions, or they will get angry. And give you a bad grade. So then you always optimize you always answer the question. A lot of the times you should say this is the wrong question.
Right.
In fact, the question is definitely wrong to some degree, just how wrong. And I think just generally taking the approach that your design is some degree wrong, probably a lot more than you think. Your goal is to make it less wrong over time.
But one of the fun things for me is watching the cargo go into the crew vessel. All of a sudden we had Dragon 1, now we have Crew Dragon, and it's substantially different but familiar. Mm-hmm. So tell us, what's been some of the hardest parts to transition from cargo into crew? Because crew is a little more important than cargo.
Yes, cargo can be replaced, crew cannot. And so the level of scrutiny, the level of attention is, I don't know, order of magnitude greater. It was already high for cargo. But it's just a whole nother level for crew. I told the SpaceX team that this mission reliability is not merely the top priority; it is the only priority right now. Mm-hmm. So we're just doing continuous engineering reviews from now, nonstop, 24 hours a day until launch. Just going over everything again and again and again. And I was out at the pad just recently, just walking down the rocket. We've got a team that's just crawling over the rocket in the horizontal. Then we're going to rotate it vertical. Then we're going to crawl over it in the vertical. And we're just looking for any possible action that can improve the probability of success, no matter how small, whether that comes from an intern or me or anyone.
What sort of things do you look for in people or in processes that make the workforce better?
Sure. Well, I think the massive thing that can be done is to make sure your incentive structure is such that innovation is rewarded and lack of innovation is punished. There's got to be a carrot and a stick. So if somebody is innovating and making good progress, then they should be promoted sooner. And if somebody is completely failing to innovate, not every role requires innovation, but if they're in a role where innovation should be happening and it's not happening, then they should either not be promoted or exited. And let me tell you, you'll get promoted, you'll get innovation real fast. Your actual total mass of a reusable steel spacecraft is less than that of the most advanced carbon fiber vehicle you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Wow.
But this happened by accident, by the way. This may sound like some great insight, but it actually happened because we were moving too slowly on composite. And I was like, we cannot move this slowly or we'll go bankrupt. So just do this with steel.
So the design has to be focused on problem solving, otherwise you're going to spend too much time trying to figure it. You don't start with
Yeah, I'm like sort of taken to management by rhyming. If the schedule is long, your design is wrong. Zip2 started off as basically, like I said, we're trying to figure out how to make enough money to exist as a company, and so since there wasn't really any advertising money being made, we thought we could help existing companies
get online, bring their stuff online. So we developed software that helped bring a lot of the newspapers and media companies online, because a lot of them just they also didn't know what the internet was.
You had some big customers, didn't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even the ones that were aware of the internet didn't have a software team, so they weren't very good at developing functionality. So we had, as investors and customers, the New York Times Company, Knight Ridder, Hearst, and so we were able to get them to pay us to develop software for them to bring them online, so online publishing stuff. And we did maps and directions and yellow pages and white pages and various other things. You don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. There is a value that colleges have, which is like, seeing whether can somebody work hard at something, including a bunch of sort of annoying homework assignments, and still do their homework assignments and kind of soldier through and get it done. That's like the main value of college. And then also, if you probably want to hang around with a bunch of people your own age for a while instead of going right into the workforce. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning. The real way I think you actually achieve intellectual property protection is by innovating fast enough. If your rate of innovation is high, then you don't need to worry about protecting the IP because other companies will be copying something that you did years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Just make sure your rate of innovation is fast. Speed of innovation is what matters. And I do say this to my teams quite a lot, that innovation per unit time, as I go innovation per year, if you want to say it, is what matters, not innovation absent time. Because if you wanted to make, say, 100% improvement in something, and that took 100 years or 1 year, that's radically different. So it's like, what is your rate of innovation? That matters. And is the rate of innovation, is that accelerating or decelerating? And a weird thing happens when companies get big is that most companies or organizations, the bigger they get, they tend to get less innovative. Not just less innovative on a per person basis, but less innovative in the absolute. And I think this is probably because the incentive structure is not there for innovation. It's not enough to use words to encourage innovation. The incentive structure must be aligned with that. That's fundamental. You need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I came to the conclusion that my initial premise was wrong. That in fact, there's a great deal of will. There's not such a shortage, but people don't think there's a way. And that if people thought there was a way, or at least something that wouldn't break the federal budget, then people would support it. Which in retrospect I think is actually kind of obvious, because the United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. Mm-hmm. People came here from other places. there's no nation that's more a nation of explorers than the United States. But people need to believe that it's possible, and that it's not. They don't have to give up like healthcare or something important.
Right.
It's got to be that's important. So I thought, okay, well, then it's not a question of will. It's a question of showing that there's a way.
In the beginning, nobody wanted a Tesla. I can tell you that. When we made the original sort of roadster sports car, people were like, well, why would I want an electric car? My gasoline car works fine. I'm like, no, electric car is better. I should try it. And it was hard to get people to do a test drive. First of all, nobody knew who we were. Never heard of this company. I'm like, yeah, we're named after Nikola Tesla. You know that guy? Nope. So for sure we were doing push in the beginning because people said there was no one telling us that they wanted an electric car. So it was not out of like, it was like lots of people coming up to me saying, hey, I really want an electric car. I heard that 0 times. So people were like, it's like, man, we better make an electric car and show that these things can be good, and then people will want them. It's like, I think it was like Henry Ford said, like when we talk about the Model T, it's like if you asked the public what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. Mm-hmm. So if you did like a big survey and said, hey, public, before automobiles, what would you like? It's like, well, I'd like my horse to go 3 miles an hour faster and eat less food and be stronger and live longer and that kind of thing. There'll be basically a bunch of incremental improvements on horse. Because people, when you say like, well, what about an automobile, that car that drives itself? I'm like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. But when you actually make an automobile and give it to people and say, okay, now this is a horse where you can keep it in the barn, and if you leave for a month, it's still alive. Yeah. So carry more weight than a horse and go further and that kind of thing. So, it's like when it's a radically new product, people don't know that they want it because it's just not in their scope. I think when they first started making TVs, they did a nationwide survey. I think this might have been like 46 or 48. It was like a famous nationwide survey. Will you ever buy a TV? And it was like 96% of respondents said no. Some crazy number. Like basically everyone's like, would you buy a TV? And maybe they put a price in there or something, I don't know. But it was famously, almost everyone said they would not buy a TV, but they didn't know what they're talking about.
So the big game-changing stuff at the beginning is a company push kind of a thing most of the time. But then changes to the product over time can be a lot more customer pull kind of a focus.
Yeah, changes to the product over time can be incremental changes. Then customers can certainly tell you, it's good to get customer feedback to say, how can we improve the product? And once they're using it, they can say, okay, I like this thing about it, I don't like this other thing, and then we can improve the product over time. Customer feedback after they have the fundamental thing is great.
I think failure is bad. I don't think it's good. But if something's important enough, then you do it even though the risk of failure is high. And so I think my advice, if somebody wants to start a company, is they should bear in mind that the most likely outcome is that it's not going to work. And they should reconcile themselves to that strong possibility. And they should only do it if they feel that they are really compelled to do it. Right. Because it's going to, the way starting a company works is like, usually in the very beginning it's kind of fun, and then it's really hellish for a number of years.
You talked about chewing glass.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who's a successful entrepreneur, and started actually his career around the same time as I did, and he has a good phrase. His name's Billy. He said, "Yeah, starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss," and
you agree with that?
Generally true. Yeah. And if you don't eat the glass, you're not going to be successful.
Well, we have a lot of good people at SpaceX that, a lot of really talented people. In fact, I wonder, like, sometimes how we can make use of their talents in the best way, because I think we're often not using their talents in the best way. Yeah, but to the point of the question that was just asked, I want to make sure Tesla recruiting does not have anything that says requires university, because that's absurd. But there is a requirement of evidence of exceptional ability. Like, you just can't, if you're trying to do something exceptional, they must have evidence of exceptional ability. I don't consider going to college evidence of exceptional ability. In fact, ideally, you dropped out and did something. I mean, obviously, we look at, like, Gates is a pretty smart guy, he dropped out. Jobs is pretty smart, he dropped out. Larry Ellison, smart guy, he dropped out. I'm like, obviously not needed. I think of these things as just, there's a certain amount of time, and within that time, you want the best net outcome. So for, all the set of actions that you can do, there's going to be, and some of which will fail, some of which will succeed, and you want the net useful output of your set of actions to be the highest. I mean, like, use like a baseball analogy. Like, baseball, they don't let you just sit there and wait for the perfect pitch until you get a real easy one. They're going to give you 3 shots. And the third one, they say, okay, and they get off they go back to put somebody else up there. So your 3 strikes on baseball, not on bat anymore. So what you're really looking for is, like, what's the batting average? How you doing on score, and just there's going to be some amount of failure, but you want your net output, net useful output to be maximized. Failure is essentially irrelevant unless it is catastrophic.
Don't just follow the trend. So you may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach of first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method.
I believe in the scientific method, and one should have a healthy skepticism of things in general. And if you approach things from a scientific standpoint, you always look at things probabilistically, not definitively. And so I think a lot of times, if somebody's a skeptic in the science community, what they're really saying is that they're not sure that it's 100% certain that this is the case. But that's not the point. The point is is look at it from the other side. So what do you think the percentage chance is of this being catastrophic for some meaningful percentage of the Earth's population? Is it greater than 1%? Is it even 1%? If it is even 1%, why are we running this experiment? I mean, if you think about a company is a group of people that are organized to create a product or service. That's what a company is. So in order to create such a thing, you have to convince others to join you in your effort. And so they have to be convinced that it's a sensible thing, that there's at least some reasonable chance of success, and if there is success, that the reward will be commensurate with the effort involved. So I think that's getting people to believe in what you're doing, and in in you is important. So in the beginning, there will be few people who believe in you or in what you're doing, but then over time, as you make progress, the evidence will build, and more people will believe in what you're doing. So I think it's a good idea when creating a company to have a demonstration, or if it's a product, to have like a good mock-up, or if it's software, to have good demoware, or to be able to sketch something so that people can really envision what it's about. Like try to get to that point as soon as possible, and then iterate to make it as real as possible, as fast as possible. If you're going to try something innovative, then you're in unexplored territories, so that odds that something will go wrong are pretty high. It's only if you try to do something that is already well understood that there's little chance of failure, but then it will not be interesting or innovative. So, for sure, uncharted territory will result in failures necessarily. Otherwise, you're not trying hard enough.
Did you surround yourself with mentors? Who did you look to for advice?
I read a lot of books and talked to lots of people. I didn't have any one person who was a mentor, but I always look for feedback from people around me, and feedback from an historical context, which is books basically.
So you want to have a competitive situation where it's truly competitive, where companies aren't gaming the system, and then where the rules are set correctly, and then you need to be on the alert for regulatory capture, where the referees are in fact captured by the players, which is and the players should not control the referees.
You're CEO of 2 companies. You're chairman of Solar City. Talk about time management. How on earth do you do this?
Well,
do you get any sleep?
Sometimes not enough. Sleep is really great, because I find if I don't get enough sleep, then I'm quite grumpy. Obviously, I think most people are that way. And also, I try to sort of figure out what's the right amount of sleep, because I found I could drop below a certain threshold of sleep, and although I'd be awake more hours and I could sustain it, I would get less done because my mental acuity would be affected. So I found generally the right number for me is around 6 to 6.5 hours on average per night.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Right. And any other tips
on... That is an average, though.
Right. Any other tips on just managing to run 2 companies simultaneously? Do you find, I know you're up here Monday, Tuesday. Is it all Tesla when you're up in Silicon Valley, and all SpaceX Wednesday, Thursday?
Having a having a smartphone is incredibly helpful, because that means you can do email during interstitial periods, like if you're in a car, you're walking, in the bathroom, everywhere. You can do email practically when you're awake, and so that's really helpful to have email for SpaceX and Tesla integrated on my phone, and then it's just you have to apply a lot of hours to actually working. So the way I generally do it is I'll be working at SpaceX on Monday, and then Monday night fly to the Bay Area, spend Tuesday and Wednesday in the Bay Area, then at Tesla, and then fly back on Wednesday night, spend Thursday and Friday at SpaceX. In the last several months, then I would fly back here on a Saturday, and either spend Saturday and Sunday at Tesla, or spend Saturday at Tesla and Sunday at SpaceX.
And generally, you want to embark on something, it's desirable to figure out if success is at least one of the possibilities.
Right, exactly.
Because for sure failure is one of the possibilities.
Yes.
But ideally you want to try to bracket it and say success is in the envelope of outcomes.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure if that was the case. I think success on an academic level would have been quite likely, because you can publish some useless paper, and most papers are pretty useless.
We have a few. Don't take offense. Sorry.
I mean, how many PhD papers are actually used by someone ever? I mean,
no, that's a good point.
Percentage-wise, it's not good.
Yeah.
So it could have been one of those outcomes where you add some leaves to the tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that leaf is nope, it's not possible.
Right.
Like,
right.
there goes 7 years of my life. So that was one path, and I was prepared to do that. But then the internet came along, and it's like, okay, the internet. I'm pretty sure success is one of the possible outcomes, and it seemed like I could either do a PhD and watch the internet happen, or I could participate and help build it in some fashion. Like I just couldn't stand the idea of watching it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So so I decided to put things on hold and start an internet company. And that was kind of we worked on internet like publishing software, maps and directions, yellow pages, kind of things.
First of all, when we interview people, we do ask for some evidence of exceptional ability, which in most cases includes innovation. This is not to say that everyone needs to be innovative. But we certainly need those that are doing advanced engineering to be innovative. And ideally, everyone is at least to some degree innovative. So at the interview point, we select for people who want to create new technology, and then the incentive structure is set up such that innovation is rewarded. Making mistakes along the way does not come with a big penalty, but failure to try to innovate at all comes with a big penalty. You'll be fired.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The carrot and stick.
Yes.
That's the stick.
If you don't even try, or somebody doesn't even try to innovate, or their innovation aspirations are not very good, then yeah, they will no longer be at the company.
I don't have a mentor per se, although I try to get feedback from as many people as possible. So I have like friends, and I ask them to, what they think of this, that, and the other thing, and as mentioned, Larry Page is a good friend of mine. Value his advice a lot, and I have many other good friends, and so I think it's good to solicit feedback, and particularly negative feedback, actually, because obviously people don't love the idea of giving you negative feedback, unless it's like some. On blogs, they do that.
I had a lot of friends of mine try to talk me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy. And one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. And there were just lots of people that thought it was a really crazy idea. And there was some people that had tried to start rocket companies, not succeeded. And they tried to talk me out of it. And but the thing is that the premise for talking me out of it was, well, we think you're going to lose the money that you invest. And I was like, well. That was my expectation anyway, right. So I don't really mind if I lose. I mean, I might, but I mean, it's not like I was trying to figure out the rank-ordered best way to invest money,
right.
And on that basis, chose space.
Right.
It's not like that's. I thought, wow.
You weren't looking at like money market bonds, AAA bonds,
right, exactly.
rocket company.
Like
you weren't like
do real estate.
Yeah,
invest in shoemaking, anything. And space is highest ROI.
Exactly.
That is not what it wasn't the premise. I just thought that it was important that humanity expand beyond Earth, and we weren't doing that. So maybe there was something I could do to kind of spur that on.
You want to take a moment to appreciate things in life and the sensations. Food's incredible, and there's just so many good things that you can experience. Some of them cost nothing, really. Have a walk in nature or just a nice meal, and it's like, wow, that's pretty great, And we should take a moment to appreciate these little things, the big things, the things that move your heart. I think that's probably the meaning of life, as close a definition as I can think. You want to have
good competitive forcing function so that you have to make the product better, or you'll lose. Like if you don't make the product better and improve the product for the end consumer, then that company should have relatively less prosperity compared to a company that makes better products. Now the car industry, is actually pretty competitive, so that's good. But the good thing about a competitive industry is then if you make a product that's better, it's going to do better in the marketplace.
How much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals, or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in, or I don't know, investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it. And have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It should be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time. Running a public company does have its drawbacks.
So you're not in a hurry?
No.
Okay.
I mean, in the case of Tesla and SpaceX, we had to raise capital, and we had kind of a complex equity structure that needed to be resolved by going public. And so I felt we kind of needed to do that in those two cases. We don't have to do that in SpaceX. I think there's a good chance we will at some point in the future. But SpaceX's objectives are super long term, and the market is not. So I'm a bit worried that if we did go public, certainly if we went public too soon, that that market pressure would force us to do short-term things and abandon kind of long-term projects.
Like going to Mars.
Right, going to Mars, very long term.
When I was in high school, I thought I would most likely be doing physics at a particle accelerator. So that's what I was, physics and computers. I mean, I got distinctions in two areas, in physics and computer science, and those were, some of my two best subjects. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to figure out what's the nature of the universe, and so I, go try to working with people, banging particles together, see what happens, and then it sort of things went along, and the superconducting super collider got canceled in the U.S., and that actually was like, whoa, what if I am working at a collider, I spent all these years, and then the government just cancels it?
Wow.
And then was like, I'm not going to do that. So it's like. So well, we roll back a little. Like I was trying to figure out when I was a kid, I had like this existential crisis, and I was about 12 years old or something, and I was like, well, what does the world mean? What's it all about? Are we living some meaningless existence? And then I made the mistake of reading Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I'm like, well, don't do that. Not you need to be a little older, I think. No, and actually, lately, these days, I sort of reread it. So I was like, he's not that bad. I mean, he's got issues. No question about it. But it's anyway. But then I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, which is like quite a good book on philosophy, I think. And I was like, okay, we don't really know what the answer is, obviously. But the universe is the answer. And really, what are the questions we should be asking to better understand the nature of the universe? And so then, to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we'll better be able to ask the questions and understand why we're here or what it's all about. And so we should sort of take the set of actions that are most likely to result in us understanding what questions to ask about the nature of the universe.
I always thought we would fail, so this is it's all upside. I thought maybe we had a 10% chance of reaching orbit starting out. So then people thought when we started SpaceX, they said, "Oh, you're going to fail." So I agree. I think we probably will fail. Yeah, but it's worth trying anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
How's that for honesty, huh?
Yeah. They said I'd lose lose all the money from PayPal. I was like, well, you're probably right. And we almost did. We had first 3 launches of Falcon 1 didn't work. Then the 4th one, we scraped together some parts, and that one worked. And if that one hadn't worked, that would have been it for us. So, I really believe in the future of space, and I think it's important that we become a spacefaring civilization, and be out there among the stars. And I think that's one of the things that makes people excited about the future. And we want the things that are in science fiction novels and movies not to be science fiction forever. We want them to be real one day. If you think like, what is education? Like, you're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain, and it's actually amazingly bad in conventional education, because it shouldn't be like this huge chore. So you're making it way better. But I mean, I think a lot of the things that I would say you've probably heard 100 times. And in fact, are if not doing, like, the more you can gamify the process of learning, the better. Like, for my kids, I do not have to encourage them to play video games.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have to pry them from their hands, like crack.
Yes.
It's like, drop that crack needle.
Yeah. You have that problem at your house too.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
The crack is addictive. Yeah.
So it's it's to the degree that you can make somehow learning like a game, it's better. And I think, unfortunately, like, a lot of education is very vaudevillian. You've got someone standing up there kind of lecturing at people, and they've done the same lecture 20 years in a row, and they're not very excited about it. And that lack of enthusiasm, is conveyed to the students. They're not very excited about it. They don't know why they're there. Why are we learning this stuff? We don't even know why. In fact, I think a lot of things people learn, probably there's no point in learning them, because they never use them in the future.
Because who's going to launch a rocket into space? I mean, that's just like,
yeah,
exactly. That never happens.
Well, you have to say, like, people, I think, don't stand back and say, well, why are we teaching people these things? And we should tell them probably why we're teaching these things. Because a lot of kids are just in school kind of puzzled as to why they're there. And I think if you can explain the why of things, then that makes a huge difference to people's motivation.
Yeah.
Then they understand purpose.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty important.
In thinking about the various problems that we're facing, or what would most likely change the future, when they were in college, there were sort of 5 things that I thought would be. I thought these were actually these. I would not regard this as a profound insight, but rather an obvious one. The internet would fundamentally change humanity, because it's like humanity would become more of a superorganism, because the internet is like a nervous system. Now suddenly, any part of the human organisms anywhere would have access to all the information.
Amazing.
Instantly.
Neuralink.
Hey, well, like imagine if you didn't have a nervous system, you wouldn't know what's going on. Your fingers wouldn't know what's going on. Your toes wouldn't know what's going on. You'd have to do it by diffusion. And the way information used to work was really by diffusion. One human would have to call another human.
Or
write them. Yes, like if it was a letter, you would have to write a letter. You'd have to hand that letter to another human. That would be carried through a bunch of things. Find another person would give it to you. Extremely slow diffusion. And if you wanted access to books, if you did not have a library, you don't have it. That's it. Right. So now you have access to all the books instantly, and if you can be in a remote, like, mountaintop jungle location or something, and have access to all of humanity's information if you've got a link to the internet. This is a fundamental, profound change.
Let me just tell the story and then you can correct it. Because the story's great and I hope it's true.
Let's see if the story that you tell is actually, how that compares to the reality. Because the reality is pretty messed up.
So, hopefully the reality's better. So you wreck the car, you get out of the car, you're doubling over with laughter. And the person with you said, why are you laughing that you just wrecked this car? And you said, no, you don't know the funny part. It wasn't insured.
Well, the punchline's correct. So I was driving up Sand Hill Road with Peter Thiel, one of the co-founders of PayPal. We're actually driving to see Mike Moritz. This is in 2000. And so we're driving up Sand Hill Road. I didn't really know how to drive the McLaren. And Peter says, so what can this do? And then, like, I'm probably number one on the list of famous last words. I said, watch this. So I floored it. I floored it and did a lane change on Sand Hill. And so the McLaren has no traction control or anything. It's massive power to the wheels, sort of 640 brake horsepower, and it only weighs a ton. So it has massive power to weight. It can break the wheels free at 80 miles an hour. So broke the rear end free and started spinning. I sort of, let's see, I think it was sort of, I was going straight and then turned, and I remember seeing the cars coming towards me while I was going backwards. And then we hit an embankment, sort of a 45-degree embankment on Sand Hill, which tossed the car into the air like a discus. And it kept rotating with about 3 foot of air clearance, according to witnesses. And then slammed down on the ground, going the original direction. And we blew the suspension out. Now, it didn't actually wreck the car. The core chassis and the engine were okay.
Thank God.
But all the glass and the wheels and everything was shredded, and there was massive body damage in the front and rear.
And did you start laughing?
I don't recall laughing. I could have been laughing in shock, but I don't recall laughing. And then Peter hitched a ride to Mike. I waited while the fire truck and the ambulance arrived, and then finally
Did Peter Thiel literally hitch a ride? Over
to Sequoia and then I once the car was taken care of, then I hitched a ride too, and we continued the meeting.
I'm picturing you and Peter Thiel, like that scene in Tommy Boy, where like the deer, and you're both like and like.
Yeah, really.
Ow! Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a parallel?
Lucky to be alive, really.
I should say so.
Yeah.
Is there a parallel with how you build companies in that story?
I hope not.
Let's see what this thing can do.
Watch this. That could be awkward with a rocket launch.
If you want another amazing Elon Musk clip, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I wake up every morning. Espresso keep me going. I wake up every morning.